Good morning and welcome to Kind Talks. My name is Steph Wicks and I am one of the co-founders of Kindship, and today I'm chatting with the lovely Sinead Quinn. Sinead is an advocate, she's a mentor, podcaster, and is super passionate about mental health, which is great. We all need a bit of support these days, don't we? So in addition to all of this, she's a wife and a mum to 3 kids. Her eldest son, Torryn, has Down syndrome. So she's recently relocated back to Australia from the US after 7 years. So it's super exciting to have you back on Aussie soil. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thanks for spending some time with our community and with me this morning for a cuppa. I've got my giant sized bowl of tea.
I got my Ningxia today. I'm all about hydrating today.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So, guys, I was just sharing before jumping on this call that I've got a very sick Charlie today at home. So if she does, I've blurred the back, but don't be surprised if a little face creeps in at any point. She's just not 100%. So
it's so hard.
It is such a juggle. Like it's, but she's all good. She'll be fine. She very rarely gets sick. So, and I think she's lapping it up a little bit as well. Yeah, she loves it. She's like, can I have ice cream later? Like, possibly. We'll see. All right, so let's just jump straight into it. So why don't you just share a little bit about yourself and your family with our community?
Yeah, I think you covered most of it just then. But we just returned from the US. So we were living over there for 7 years. My husband's in tech. So we went over to live in San Francisco for his job. So tech being security and information security, as they call it there, cyber security. Sorry, that was taking the piss out of the American accent.
I love it. I love it. Got like that, like mingle, that like mixed accent, like every other word. So I get the influence.
My accent, I always have to justify this. My accent actually was a mess before I moved there.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I've been traveling basically since I was 19. Yeah. And both of my parents are Irish, and I used to live in Belfast. Actually, I lived in Belfast for like 2.5 years, and when I was there, I developed the broadest Belfast accent you could possibly imagine.
Oh, how interesting!
My dad was disgusted. He was like, of all the accents to pick up. And so only when I met my husband did that start like watering down, and so what's left is then followed by 6.5 years in London, and Manchester and Thailand, and then America.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
Yeah, so but we returned. So we actually left London when I was pregnant with Torryn. We didn't know he had Down syndrome. He was a birth diagnosis. He was born in Thailand, in Bangkok. And that was planned. And yeah, he was a birth diagnosis. So it was a big surprise. We returned to Australia about 8 weeks later, I think it was. And then we had our daughter. She was due exactly 2 years later, but she arrived at 28 weeks. So she was born in January instead of April.
Goodness.
Yes. So that was another complete roller coaster. And then we had our third exactly 2 years later.
Oh my goodness.
But we almost lost him at 23 weeks. Same thing. I had placenta previa, and so it was a lot. And I had postnatal depression after our third. My dad had also just passed away at that point, and it was a lot. It was a lot. 3 under 4, all with like the first pregnancy was so easy, so smooth. I was like all over it. I knew everything I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. But you think you know everything until you don't.
Yes, exactly. Until it's thrown at you and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. What the? And so it was just a really big, strong learning curve into parenthood. And not your usual journey. Like a lot of us in the community don't have a typical entry. Or if we do, it's because our first is like, typical and everything goes like it's meant to, and then something happens subsequently.
Sure.
So I had postnatal depression, and ultimately when we moved to America, I actually got really sick. And I had always been interested in like yoga and health and all of these things, but having Torryn, I went headfirst into it, like researching the therapies, like all of the things. And then I got really sick once we moved to the US. I was burning the candle at both ends. I was stressed out of my head. I was trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
I was eating gluten, which I knew didn't agree with me, but
you just, yeah.
I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be, I'm vegetarian as well. So I didn't want to be the person going to this new person's house for dinner. Like, would be invited to someone's house for dinner. I'd be like, oh, I'm vegetarian and I don't eat gluten.
Yes.
So, you know, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to fit in. So I started eating gluten again. And also culturally, I didn't know where to find gluten-free. Like there isn't a gluten-free aisle typically in the US. I had to work it all out. But I got super, super sick. And ultimately, it allowed me to go back to school because I was so interested and I was asking all the questions and I was getting like no's from all the doctors. I got like, you're a hypochondriac, it's all in your head. I know. One doctor actually told me, oh my God, she was awful. She actually said to me, there's nothing wrong with you. You just need to go to a retreat and relax.
Calm down, basically. Like, oh
yeah.
my God.
Yeah. And I was like, what the living hell? And I actually started believing. I remember saying to my husband, what if I'm crazy?
Yeah, like what?
Like,
yeah.
I've been going to doctors for 6 years now, saying that there's something wrong. So after our third was born, even before that, I was like, there's something not right. There's something not sitting right in my body. I don't know what it is. Something's not right. And then after our third was born, I kept on going back. I was getting like all over body rashes. I was like, I couldn't lose weight. I was like, there was so many things going on. And then I signed up to IIN. I don't know if you guys know that here in Australia. I think it's International Institute of Nutrition and something.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah.
And I mean, that was like 6 years ago. And the next day, that day, that lecture was on celiac disease. And it was this speaker, and she's actually an American actress, but she's not like one of those well-known ones. She's like sort of like primetime, daytime movies kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she was talking, her name is Jenny something, and she was going through all of these things about celiac disease that is misunderstood. And I was like, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me.
Yeah. So that was your light bulb moment where you're like,
yeah. But the funny thing is I had actually gone to the doctor 6 years previously and said, I think I have celiac disease. I'm researching stuff for Torryn.
And they just didn't listen, like, or didn't take you seriously, or what was?
I didn't have any of the normal markers, so I held like the genetics, but my inflammation markers weren't like high, and it was all these other things that weren't typical. Like I was holding weight, I wasn't losing weight, right. I wasn't malnourished, but none of my like levels were. They were all just hanging on above like 1 point, you know, like my vitamin B or iron was like 1 point above under the marker. Yeah. So I didn't have any of the typical symptoms. And I mean, and now that's like, how old's that's 10, so that's like 11 years ago. So it was even less understood then than it is now. And yeah, I was able to, we had amazing health insurance there. So I was able to just ring up a gastroenterologist and just book straight in. I got in the next week and I went in with like my list, and they did a scope the next week. And it was like, yeah, you got celiac disease.
Oh my God.
I was like, thank God. I was so relieved.
That's it. I can imagine like just that, having to like hold that and wonder what's going on. Like, and
well, I was in urgent care. So there's a thing over there that's in between like the ER and the doctor's office, and it's called urgent care, and you go there if like you've got the flu or a migraine or an ear infection, or it's like an emergency, but you don't go there for like a car accident. And so I was in urgent care all the time with migraines. I was so fatigued I could barely get out of bed. My anxiety was through the roof, and I'd never really properly experienced anxiety before, but it was so high. And I just, when I got diagnosed with celiac, I started really researching autoimmune disease. And what I kept on seeing was every time you looked at some sort of like area in the body that was dysfunctioning, I'm sure the audience is all very familiar. I'm sure you talk about this all the time. Dis-ease, the dis-ease in the body that causes disease. And so when I was looking back to it, and I would like trace it back and back and back and back and back and back, and I'd be like, oh my God, it's stress.
Yes, exactly. Stress related. Yeah, no, I've got Charlotte crying. As well. One sec. Charlotte, you're okay. Come here. Come here. Come on. She's literally on the floor. Give me 1 sec. Give me 1 second. Okay, and that's why we don't do a lot. We didn't do okay. She's fine. She was just lying on the floor going, I can't get up. And I'm like, you probably can, but it's okay. She's all good. We keep it real anyway. So even if I left this in, it wouldn't be a problem. No. Yeah, so that's really, really interesting. Like how
and look, I mean, you're a health coach and you've studied all of this. And every time I looked at, I mean, you look at cancer, you look at diabetes, you look at celiac disease, you look at any autoimmune disease is usually triggered by a massive life event. Absolutely. We as parents within the disability community experience, these are massive life events, our children's diagnosis. And, you know, we mightn't be feeling it in that moment because we're often in that fight or flight or freeze, and we're in response to those massive life moments. But 6 months later or a year later or 12, 2 years later, our body is going back to try and survive and get back to normal or our new normal. And the dysfunction that has been created during those high stress moments creates dysfunction within our body, and then that creates disease. And look, I'm oversimplifying it,
of course, but that's the crux of it. We often talk about, and this is I think where like our community originated from, in the sense that, like, Sandy did that live on fertility statistics in parents with kids with disabilities, right? And it was just like, it's crazy, some of the stats. And it's not like purely physical, it's also like mental health impacts. And like, obviously we're holding stress in our bodies, but not learning the skills needed to be able to let it go or to deal with the processes as they come up. And it's more than just burnout, or more than just like a good sleep, or more than, like you said, like a retreat. Like, these things are wonderful and they're important, but they're not solutions. They're band-aids. Exactly. It's really, and like when I was looking at your content and like, really immersing myself in what you're about, what I love is that you're aligned in the sense that it's like a holistic view on health. It's like, and it's a process, and it's continuous and it's ongoing. And I feel like all people should have that same mentality, like regardless of your situation. But like, it's just like a no-brainer, right? But it's like we get this like amplified version of that. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah. And I think people, you don't listen. Like, you don't listen to other people warning you often. You have to experience it yourself. Like, you have to hit the wall. You have to, like, you have to go through the trying and often hitting burnout before you actually listen. And it's sad because we want to warn everyone and we want to say, like, don't do it. And they're like, but I'm not sick, I'm fine. And it's, you often don't feel the side effects of this, like, pushing through until later on. And it's, I kind of moved away a little bit from health coaching. And it sounds like Sandy was talking about this already, but I found research, and it was like 5 years ago whenever I was on my soapbox. I was like, I want people to start listening that they've got to look after their body better. So I was like, I didn't want to talk about being a mother in the disability community. I was like, somebody else can do that.
Sure.
Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I just want women to get healthy.
Yeah.
And so, but I was like, how come nobody in the disability community is talking about this?
Why aren't we talking about it? Yeah.
Like, what's going on? And so I found this research, and it was from 2007, and it was talking about the increased rates of cancer, heart disease, and fertilities within the special, and they called it special needs back then still, and autism communities, and parents that were like 40% more likely to die of heart disease.
That's exactly the one. Yep.
Yeah. And, you know, and I was like researching, what is the death rate? Like, what's this like death rate for? And, you know, some of it was suicide. Yes. Like, some of that was coming in under suicide. And that, again, this was what made me so angry was this was research from 2007, and it was pretty buried. Like, it took me solid 6 months of research trying to find this.
Yeah.
And nobody was talking about it.
Yeah. That's the thing, you know. Yeah. It's like, I think that's what, when I even remember, I think she said that on her live, like, no one is talking about this, and like, I'm just not okay with it. And I suppose like we built our community, and just like women everywhere were like, oh my God, like I'm suffering in silence, and like, what do I do? And do you know what, like sometimes I've gone, but is it like, how, like, are we making a change, or is it real? And it just keeps being reinforced to me year after year, and month after month. We look at our, we do retreats, right? As like part of what we do. And there's like, I do like the medical forms for people who are attending, or like any special like adaptations that need to be made or whatever. And every time it's about 70 to 80% of the women there have like a chronic disease, or like an intense anxiety that they need like things to be done in a specific way. And these are young women, like when we're not talking, like, it's just crazy to me, or arthritis through the body, or just it's fascinating and horrifying.
Yeah. And I think there's been so much shame is associated with it, because if we are sick or if we are not coping, then we're not being a good enough parent to our children. And we can't talk about it. And one thing that really bugs me in Australia, and, you know, being in America for 7 years, everyone loves therapy. You shouldn't just talk about my therapist, or, and I remember sitting at dinner one night, and I had come back. It had been like, I think I'd been away for like 2 years, maybe 3. And I was like, yeah, you know, and after we had our youngest, I had postnatal depression, and you could just hear everyone at the dinner table was like, I was like, what the fuck are you guys like all quiet for? Like, I didn't murder someone in front of you. I'm not like, it's postnatal depression. I had it. Like,
but we talk about like a flu or a cold, or like a sore arm or back pain. Like, why aren't we discussing mental health more openly? And, you know, something that I did want to ask you about as well is, I know we talk about women a lot of the time, and I think that's simply because like women, like in the space, and mothers have always been probably the people that come forth like for that support, or like are more willing to talk. But I know that there's definitely a need to support like men and partners, like our partners in the space. And it's just very like, you found that obviously in your experience as well?
I never studied men. And I work with women.
Right, that's our struggle too. We're trying to make a dad's circle at Kindship, so there's some sort of like
so definitely I know there's the Down Syndrome Network in the US. Down Syndrome Network, oh my God. And they do have a dad's retreat, so they've got the Rockin' Mums retreat, and they have the Rockin' Dads retreat. And similar things, you know, weight issues. I think sometimes to a lesser degree, I like, don't quote me on that, like, I don't know, but I think as mothers or as primary carers, we carry more. We carry it better often, like we can hide it better. But we carry more. But it's not to say that the husbands or the partners don't also feel it. They do. And I know my husband in particular, like, you know, he got very unwell over the summer, over the American summer, June, July, and part of it was stress. Part of it 100% was stress. You know, he I mean, I don't want to talk about his medical history.
No, of course.
But he has been experiencing some ongoing health issues, which is part of the reason. Excuse me, my dog's just run away.
That's totally fine.
He's a little monkey. So we've got a puppy. We've got a puppy.
Oh, so do we. Don't worry. I've got a beagle and she's behind me chewing a bone. I was like, shh, take the bone. So
Just ran across the room with
I totally understand. I've got baby gates all around my house.
Yes.
It's the only way we survive.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah,
so my husband has had some ongoing health issues since I think it's July. Yeah, I think it was June. And 100% is associated with stress on the body.
Yeah.
You know, it comes out. There's an amazing book. I've got it here somewhere. I've got so many books, it's ridiculous. But like, oh God, what's it called? I've totally forgotten. The Body Speaks or something like that. And it's an amazing book. I mean, it was published so long ago, and in part of studying yoga nidra, which I got certified in the US, we the body's now. Hang on.
Is it annoying you that you can't?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was going to mention to you as well. So our amazing head of education, Tara Thompson, does so all of our blogs, and her and her husband actually have their story is basically he had his own mental health situation after their daughter Willow was diagnosed. Yeah, so he's been very brave in the sense from like a male perspective, and like I'll talk out about our experiences and share them, because I guarantee you there'll be other like dads who are like feeling exactly the same, or feeling like I think there's almost like a sense of they should be able to fix or like do more, but they can't, because no one can, because it's just the situation that everyone's dealing with. And like often he said that he would feel shut out of the conversation, and like mums just are so quick to, and we're awesome, like we just jump in and we find the answers and we do what we need to do. So yeah, so I just thought
men are like predisposed to fixing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of us women, especially within the disability community, that carry a very masculine energy. And that masculine energy focuses in on fixing and doing and supporting and holding everything together. Men also are naturally predisposed to have that. But as you said, I think they carry even higher shame around speaking up about struggling. And maybe we see it coming out in male bodies differently to women's bodies. Possibly. Again, I didn't study male health and I don't work with men, so I'm not as familiar with how it presents. But maybe that's like the heart attacks, because you hear more men having heart attacks, and maybe it's the, like, you know, you hear a lot more heart disease within the male community, and maybe that's how it presents differently. I again, like I said, I'm not familiar, but I have absolutely zero thoughts. My brain just like lost a word of thinking that men would be experiencing the same thing.
We've always just thought it because, you know, we're, like you said, like we're not dads, so we can't like share that perspective. However, like if there's just a space where we can kind of create that like, you know, opportunity to be supported, then that's all it needs. I mean, at this point in time anyway, it's definitely forefront of our minds. And
I think if there's less men that come up and do speak, I think that Australian society, the stereotypical Australian, you know, bloke, I guess, is not in touch with their feelings as such, as of an older demographic. I think younger are becoming more open and more sensitive and talking about their feelings. But I feel like the older generation, and you see similar in the US as well. I think in the US though, there are a lot more men getting up and speaking about it. and when I think about it, and there's like more like men's retreats in the US. Like I have actually looked for some for my husband here, and he's like, I'm not gonna go out and like be all like feely and talk about my feelings with a group.
That's what we said, that we were like, we should do a dad's retreat, and but then we were like, but will they want that? And then maybe it needs to be more activity based. So if you're a dad watching this, comment and let us know what you want. Maybe you want a retreat. I'm not sure.
In the US, they usually like, because I looked into them for my husband, and there, because when we traveled, we went on a road trip through the US during the American summer. Right. We were returning to Australia, but COVID, our flights kept on getting cancelled because the borders kept on getting shut. So which is one of the reasons I'm on my, like I call it my sabbatical. The level of stress that I have been carrying and my husband has been carrying over the last 10 months has been extreme. Different extreme to when I moved over and got sick. And one of the things I'm so grateful for and very fortunate is that I recognized a lot of triggers that were coming up for me, and I was able to go, do you know what? I've got a choice right now where I can continue to struggle and push through like I've done in the past and get sick, or I can just do as I say, take my own medicine and pull my foot off the brake. So I pulled my foot off the brake with working in September. And I'm still officially on my sabbatical.
All right, but like I love that you kind of look at that and go like, what do I, like you're understanding like stress from almost a scientific level, and then like applying that to your life and what you need so that you and your family can be healthier and happier. Like that's it really at the end of the day.
100%.
So just quickly, we'll wrap up soon. I feel like I could talk to you all day. Like,
sorry.
Sorry. Maybe we need to do like a 2-part series or something.
Always up for it.
I won't have like a sick child in the background and like a beagle, anyway. So what would you like other parents who are just starting to walk down this path? They might be maybe I've just got a diagnosis or they're just not coping, and like what advice would you give them at this early stage, maybe when it comes to stress and what's your advice?
I think the first lots
the key piece of advice maybe.
I think 2, reach out, build community is the core of support. Second piece of advice, I've got 3. Second piece of advice, get a therapist. Like remove any shame you feel about therapy. There is literally nothing wrong. In fact, there is everything right about sitting in a therapist's office and admitting that you're struggling. Like being able to even, no matter how hard it is, even if like, I remember the first time I went to therapy properly, I just sat there and cried for an hour every week. Like I barely said anything. And I would
maybe the first layer, right? Like
it is, you know, and now I'm like in a mastermind that's run by a therapist. I like have my own therapist. I remember listening to one of my mentors, Gabby Bernstein, and she was like, I've got 3 therapists. I'm like, whoa. And now I'm like, maybe I should get a 3rd.
Be like Gabby.
But it's like, it's so I mean, I'm studying with one of them, but like it's so healthy to talk about your feelings. It's so healthy. And there's no shame on medication. That's, yes, we are in an overprescribed society. However, it saves lives. Absolutely. So that's another thing I hear a lot in Australia. Well, I don't need medicated. I'm like, dude, there is nothing wrong with taking medication. It literally saves lives. Like I was barefoot having a full-on anxiety attack on the side of the road once because I didn't have medication. And yes, as I said, we are an overprescribed society. However, if you can work with a therapist and your GP and get onto a low dose that's going to support you and your family, don't hesitate. Like, don't jump at it. Try therapy, try some other things.
Through the processes.
Do it. Like, don't be scared. Don't be ashamed, I think and
that's it. Like, I think so many parents like just live in this sense of like just feeling stuck which is completely understandable, but because there is that fear of like, of that shame, like you said, like, oh, I don't know what to do because I don't know if, you know, medication's an option, or I don't know if I can access a therapist, or should I, or, you know, like just that sense of despair.
And I think the third thing that I would say is, just because we have children that have additional needs and have disabilities, it doesn't mean that we can't lead full lives.
Love it.
Like, we can have such amazing lives.
Yes.
And if you have your community, if you have your mental health plan and you have your support, it makes it even easier. And that's where I get really juiced up, because we have, the world is our oyster for our kids. Like, we have the ability to change our lives, our children's lives, our families, when we are in a solid place.
Yeah,
and that shines out, and that sort of energy shines out to the people around us. It builds a stronger community, it lifts others up. And I think, you know, that's the most important thing. And I didn't see that whenever I started my journey into my own mental health and physical fitness, that I didn't see anyone talking about it, and I didn't see anyone living it. And that's one of the reasons I got involved in doing what I do, because I wanted to see that change. So I love seeing what you guys are doing. I love it, because it's so important for other women to realize that, okay, I'm a mother, I have a child that has additional needs. The way I go about life is going to be different. Everything is changed when you become a mum, no matter if your child has a disability or not. And then if your child has a disability, it's changed even more. But you approach it differently, you achieve your goals differently, but you don't stop.
I love that. It's all the things, like, we constantly talk about. I mean, I know that we rabbit on about it all the time, but like, it's also that whole thing of like, we really need to be looking at changing the narrative around disability, and really like, you know, instead of it being this like tragic set of circumstances that is the end of like, and I know, and I'm really not discounting that it is difficult.
Life is harder.
It's hard, but it's like, it together, can we somehow like take action so that can actually just look a bit different, but still be all the things. Like,
our goals change. My goals changed. Like, hugely changed. Did I ever think that I was going to be a speaker? God, no. Never in a month of Sundays. I wanted to like develop properties and, you know, interior design, and I didn't want to be a speaker on health and mental health and like put myself in the spotlight to like be no.
Life puts you into those places like magically, doesn't it? And you kind of, I love it. Well, I've loved speaking to you today. Honestly, like I said, I could spend another hour. Like, we didn't even get through any of the questions, but I love that.
Sorry.
I love it. So and I knew that would kind of probably be the case. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we might actually feature you again, because I think you're just fabulous.
I'd love to. I mean, this is what is on my heart, and I guess I haven't been talking for the last 6 months, so now I'm like exploding.
You're back. I love it. I love that we're here for it. It's awesome. All right, well, thanks guys for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next episode. We will speak to you super soon. Bye.